The crystal wine glass shattered in my grip, sending shards and Cabernet across the pristine white tablecloth of my parents' dining room. But I barely noticed the chaos or the gasps around me. All I could focus on was my sister's smirking face as she delivered the news that would change everything. I'm Robin, and until exactly 47 seconds ago, I was the CEO of Pierce Technologies, the company I built from nothing but a dream and maxed out credit cards in my garage 5 years ago. You're just a glorified secretary now, Palmer drawled, adjusting her designer blazer with practiced precision. The board voted unanimously this morning. I'm sure you understand. It's just business. Just business. The words echoed in my head as I watched drops of wine spread across the tablecloth like bloodstains. My blood, my company, my life's work, all stolen by my own sister. Robin, dear, you're bleeding, my mother Hazel said softly, reaching for my hand, where a small shard of glass had nicked my palm. I pulled away. I'm fine. Well, this is certainly unexpected, my father Dean commented, dabbing his mouth with his napkin. Though perhaps it's for the best. Palmer has more experience with... Experience? I couldn't hold back my laugh. She's never built anything in her life except excuses. Palmer's smile didn't waver. That's exactly the kind of emotional response that convinced the board you weren't ready for this level of responsibility. A CEO needs to be calculated, controlled. Like systematically lying to steal your sister's company? I shot back. Robin, my father warned, his tone sharp, your sister is trying to help. The company needs stable leadership. The company was growing at 300% annually under my leadership, and now it will grow even more, Palmer interrupted smoothly. In fact, I'm already in talks with Vertex Industries about an acquisition that will put us on the global map. My stomach dropped. Vertex Industries, our biggest competitor. Everything I'd built would be stripped for parts and absorbed into their corporate machine. You can't do this, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I already have. Palmer stood, straightening her skirt. The papers are signed. The press release goes out tomorrow morning. I suggest you take some time off, clear your head. Maybe travel a bit. You can afford it now, thanks to the generous severance package I arranged. I felt a hand on my shoulder and turned to see Adrian, my legal advisor and oldest friend, who had been silently watching the drama unfold. His expression told me everything I needed to know. This was real, this was happening, and it had been meticulously planned. I should go, I managed to say, standing up so quickly my chair scraped against the hardwood floor. Robin, please stay for dessert, my mother pleaded. We hardly ever have the whole family together anymore. Huh, family! I looked around the table, at my father's disapproving frown, my mother's worried eyes, and Palmer's triumphant smile. I don't see any family here. As I walked toward the door, Palmer called out, Don't forget to turn in your key card on Monday. Security will escort you to clear out your office. I stopped but didn't turn around. You know what the funny thing is, Palmer? You've always been so desperate to prove you're better than me that you never stopped to actually learn from me. And that's going to be your biggest mistake. Is that a threat? She sounded amused. No, I said, finally turning to meet her eyes. It's a promise. Adrian followed me out to my car, grabbing my arm before I could get in. Robin, wait, there's something you need to know about the patents. Not now. I cut him off, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. Tomorrow, my place. 8 a.m. Bring everything you have. He nodded, understanding in his eyes. What are you going to do? I thought about Palmer's smug face, about my father's dismissal, about everything I'd sacrificed to build my company. A calm clarity settled over me as I replied, I'm going to take back what's mine. And I'm going to make sure my sister never forgets what happens when you mistake kindness for weakness. As I drove away from my parents' house, I could still see Palmer standing at the window, raising her wine glass in a mock toast. She thought she'd won. She thought she'd finally beaten her little sister at something. She had no idea what was coming. I spent the night going through old photos, trying to pinpoint exactly when Palmer's smile had turned from sisterly to sinister. The morning light was creeping through my windows when I found it, a picture from my company's launch party 3 years ago. Palmer standing slightly behind me, her eyes fixed not on the camera, but on my champagne glass, watching as I celebrated my first major contract. The doorbell jolted me from my thoughts. Adrian arrived exactly at 8 a.m., carrying a thick folder and wearing the expression I'd seen countless times before major negotiations. "Coffee's ready," I said, leading him to my kitchen island. "Tell me everything." He spread out documents across the granite surface. "Palmer's been planning this for months. She approached board members individually, built relationships, planted seeds of doubt about your leadership." "Of course she did." I poured coffee into 2 mugs. "She's always been good at making people see what she wants them to see." But here's what she missed. Adrian pulled out a specific document, his finger tapping on a highlighted section. "The core patents. They're still in your name personally, not the company's." My phone buzzed. A text from Vada. "Just saw the press release. WTF, I'm coming over." "Show me," I told Adrian, ignoring the message for now. He walked me through the technical details, but my mind was already racing ahead. Palmer would need those patents for the Vertex acquisition. She'd overlooked something so basic, so fundamental, just like she always did. The doorbell rang again. Vada burst in before I could answer, still wearing her hospital scrubs from her night shift. "I'm going to kill her," she announced, dropping her bag on the counter. "Just say the word, Robin. I know how to make it look like natural causes." Despite everything, I laughed. Vada had been my best friend since we were kids, long before Palmer had perfected her act as the perfect daughter. "No murder necessary," Adrian said, sliding a document toward Vada. "We have something better." "The patents," I explained. "She can't sell what she doesn't own." Vada's eyes lit up. "So you can block the acquisition?" "I could," I said slowly, an idea forming. "But that's not enough. I want her to feel what it's like to have everything pulled out from under her, just like she did to me." My phone buzzed again, Palmer's name flashing on the screen. I put it on speaker. "Good morning, sis." Her voice dripped with false sweetness. "Just wanted to remind you about clearing out your office today. I've scheduled a press conference for noon to announce some exciting changes." "Wouldn't miss it for the world," I replied, matching her tone. "By the way, how's Edgar?" A pause. "Edgar who?" "Edgar Green, CEO of Vertex. You mentioned the acquisition last night." "That's confidential information," Palmer said, her voice tightening. "Not for long, right? Noon press conference and all." I winked at Vada, who was covering her mouth to hold back laughter. "See you there, sis." I hung up and turned to Adrian. "How quickly can you set up a meeting with Edgar?" He was already typing on his phone. "He's been trying to connect with you for months. I'm sure he'd clear his schedule." "Perfect." I grabbed my laptop. "Vada, I need you to help me dig up everything you remember about Palmer's business successes over the past 10 years. Every job she suddenly left. Every project that mysteriously fell apart after she took credit." "Oh, honey," Vada grinned, pulling up a chair. "I've been keeping receipts since high school, when she tried to take credit for my science project." For the next hour, we built a timeline. A pattern emerged. Palmer hadn't just stolen my company. She'd made a career out of taking credit for other people's work, always moving on before the truth came out. "Got it," Adrian announced, looking up from his phone. "Edgar can meet us at 10:30. That gives us just enough time before Palmer's press conference." I stood up, straightening my jacket. Time to remind my sister of an important lesson she never learned. Karma doesn't send warning texts. "What's the plan?" Vada asked, gathering her things. "Palmer wants to play chess?" I smiled, thinking of all those childhood games where she'd claimed victory by changing the rules. "Let's show her what happens when you actually know how to play." As we headed out, I caught my reflection in the hallway mirror. For the first time since last night's dinner, I recognized myself again. Palmer had taken my company, but she'd forgotten something crucial. She wasn't the only one who'd learned to be calculated and controlled. The difference was, I'd learned it by building something real. She'd learned it by destroying things. Time to show her the difference. Edgar's office occupied the top floor of a gleaming downtown skyscraper, exactly the kind of corporate excess I'd always avoided at Pierce Technologies. The irony wasn't lost on me that I now needed his help. "Robin!" He greeted me with a firm handshake. "I have to admit, I was surprised to get your call, especially given this morning's news. Let me guess. Palmer already reached out about the acquisition." He gestured for us to sit. "She did. Rather aggressively, I might add. Mentioned something about revolutionary patents that would change the industry." "Interesting." I placed a folder on his desk. "Would those be these patents?" Edgar flipped through the documents, his eyebrows rising. "These are registered to you personally. 5 years ago," I said, watching his expression carefully. "When I was working out of my garage, surviving on ramen and energy drinks." "Tell him about the prototype," Adrian prompted. I pulled out my phone, showing Edgar a video from those early days. There I was, exhausted but excited, demonstrating the first working version of our security software. "Palmer wasn't there," I said quietly. "She was too busy climbing the corporate ladder at other companies. But now she wants to sell you something she doesn't own and doesn't understand." Edgar leaned back, studying me. "Why are you showing me this?" "Because I want to make you a better offer." I met his gaze steadily. "One that doesn't involve my sister's smoke and mirrors." "I'm listening." For the next 20 minutes, I laid out my proposal. A genuine partnership instead of an acquisition, combining Vertex's market reach with my innovation. By the time I finished, Edgar was nodding slowly. "This could work," he said, "but your sister—" "Will be at her press conference in exactly 1 hour," I completed his thought. "Announcing an acquisition that can't happen without my patents." A smile tugged at Edgar's lips. "You want me there?" "Front row," he checked his watch. "I'll need to move some meetings." "Trust me," I stood up. "You don't want to miss this." As we left Vertex's building, Vada called. "Robin, you need to see this. Palmer's giving interviews, talking about how she saved the company from your mismanagement." My hands tightened on my steering wheel. "Send me everything." "There's more," Vada continued. "Your father's with her, backing up her story. They're painting you as some naive kid who got lucky with one idea." The familiar anger bubbled up, but this time it felt different. Cleaner, more focused. "Remember that summer internship Palmer had at Global Tech?" I asked. "The one that mysteriously ended after 3 months?" "Yeah, she claimed she left for a better opportunity." "Call your cousin who works there. Find out what really happened." Vada's voice turned gleeful. "On it." We pulled into the Pierce Technologies parking lot with 30 minutes to spare. Security tried to stop me at the entrance, but Adrian stepped forward with a court order he'd prepared overnight. My personal office might be off limits, but the conference room where Palmer would make her announcement was still legally accessible to shareholders, and I still owned 30% of the company. "Ms. Pierce," reporters were already gathering in the lobby. "Can you comment on your sister's takeover?" "Actually," I smiled, "I'm saving my comments for the press conference. You won't want to miss it." Palmer was already at the podium when we entered, doing sound checks. She faltered mid-sentence when she saw me, but quickly recovered. "Robin," she said into the microphone, her voice echoing through the room. "This is a private event." "No," I corrected her, taking a seat in the front row. "This is a shareholder event, and I'm still a shareholder." Her eyes narrowed when she saw Edgar enter behind me. "What is he doing here?" "I invited him," I said sweetly. "We had the most interesting meeting this morning. Didn't we, Edgar?" Palmer's perfectly composed facade cracked, just for a second. She turned to our father, who had just walked in, panic flickering across her face. "Daddy," she started, but he was staring at Edgar too, recognition and confusion warring in his expression. "The press conference will begin in 5 minutes," an assistant announced. I settled back in my chair, watching Palmer frantically whisper with her team, occasionally shooting worried glances my way. She had no idea what was coming, but she knew something was wrong. just like all those times in our childhood when her lies were about to unravel. You sure about this? Adrian whispered. I thought about all the nights I'd spent building my company, all the sacrifices I'd made, all the times Palmer had tried to diminish my achievements. Absolutely, I replied. It's time for everyone to see who my sister really is. The cameras started rolling. Palmer stepped up to the podium, camera flashes illuminating her practiced smile. Good afternoon, everyone. Today marks an exciting new chapter for Pierce Technologies. I watched her scan the crowd, faltering slightly when she noticed more unfamiliar faces than expected. Vada had been busy. There were reporters from every major tech publication, not just the friendly local press Palmer had invited. As you know, the board has appointed me as CEO, she continued, and I'm thrilled to announce that we're entering final negotiations for a landmark acquisition by Vertex Industries. The reporter's hands shot up immediately. Palmer pointed to one in the front row. Ms. Pierce, can you address rumors that the core patents are still registered to your sister? Palmer's smile tightened. Those are merely administrative details that will be resolved during the transition. Actually, Edgar stood up, straightening his tie. I'd like to address that point. The color drained from Palmer's face. This isn't the appropriate time. On the contrary, Edgar's voice carried authority that commanded attention. As CEO of Vertex Industries, I think this is exactly the time to clarify that we have no intention of acquiring Pierce Technologies under its current leadership. The room erupted in murmurs. Cameras swiveled between Palmer, Edgar, and me. There seems to be some confusion. Palmer attempted to regain control. We had preliminary discussions. We did, Edgar agreed. And during those discussions, you claimed to have full rights to proprietary technology that, as it turns out, you don't own. My father stood up abruptly. This is outrageous. Palmer has been nothing but a fraud? Vada's voice cut through the chaos as she strode in, waving a folder. I have statements from 3 former employers detailing how Palmer took credit for other people's work, manipulated data, and left before her deceptions could be exposed. Palmer gripped the podium. These are baseless accusations. Including, Vada continued, documentation from Global Tech about your mysterious departure after attempting to steal proprietary information. The reporters were scribbling frantically now, cameras clicking nonstop. I finally spoke up, rising from my seat. What everyone's wondering is, Palmer, have you ever actually created anything yourself? She turned to me, desperation replacing her usual smugness. You're just jealous because I'm better at running this company. Running it into the ground, you mean? I pulled out my phone, projecting quarterly reports onto the screen behind her. In the weeks since you took control, our stock has dropped 15%. 3 major clients have suspended their contracts pending review. I can fix that. With what? I challenged. The patents you don't own? The technology you don't understand? The trust you never earned? Our father's face had turned an alarming shade of red. Robin, stop this immediately. No, Dad. For once you're going to listen. I turned to face him directly. You always believed Palmer's version of events. Did you ever once ask to see my work? To understand what I built? The silence was deafening. I have an announcement of my own, I continued, addressing the reporters. Vertex Industries and I have reached an agreement. Not for an acquisition, but for a strategic partnership that will expand our reach while maintaining our independence. Edgar nodded in confirmation as cameras swung toward him. Furthermore, I added, given recent revelations about corporate espionage and fraud, I've instructed my legal team to pursue all available remedies to protect our intellectual property and shareholders' interests. Adrian stood, distributing documents to the press, including evidence of insider trading and board manipulation. Palmer's facade finally crumbled completely. You can't do this. Daddy, tell her she can't do this. But our father was staring at the documents in his hands, seeing for the first time the real numbers, the real achievements, and the real fraud. The board meeting, he said slowly, where you presented Robin's performance as failing, These numbers were altered. I did it for us. Palmer's voice cracked. For the family name. The family name? I laughed. The only thing you've done to our family name is prove exactly how far you'd go to steal what you couldn't earn. Security entered the room. Not Palmer's security, but Adrian's team, armed with court orders and evidence preservation notices. Ms. Pierce, one of them addressed Palmer, we need you to step away from the company computers and surrender your devices. As they led her away from the podium, Palmer turned to me one last time. You've ruined everything. Huh, no! I corrected her, watching as reporters rushed to file their stories. I've just shown everyone the truth. You ruined everything yourself. The cameras kept rolling as Palmer was escorted out, capturing every second of her downfall for the world to see. But I wasn't watching her anymore. I was looking at my father's face, seeing the moment he finally realized which daughter he should have believed all along. The aftermath of Palmer's exposure hit our family like a tornado. My mother insisted on hosting a small family dinner to sort things out. But as I pulled up to their house 3 days later, I knew this wouldn't be a peaceful meal. Your sister is devastated, my mother said the moment I walked in, wringing her hands. She hasn't left her apartment since she got caught, I finished, setting down the wine bottle I'd brought. That's usually what happens when fraud is exposed, Mom. My father emerged from his study, looking older than I'd ever seen him. The board called an emergency meeting tomorrow. They're voting to reinstate you as CEO. I know. I called the meeting. He nodded slowly. The press is having a field day. Our name is everywhere. Would you prefer they didn't report on Palmer's crimes? I asked, keeping my voice level. Should we have kept it quiet, like all the other times she's done something like this? The doorbell rang. My mother rushed to answer it, probably grateful for the interruption. To everyone's surprise, it was Veda. Sorry I'm late, she announced, breezing in. Traffic was horrible. Oh, and Palmer's not coming. She sent this instead. She handed my mother an envelope. Inside was a handwritten note that my mother read aloud, her voice trembling. I can't face you all after what Robin did to me. She's destroyed everything I worked for. I hope you're happy now, sis. Love, Palmer. What she worked for? Vada scoffed. You mean what she stole? Vada, my mother pleaded. Please, she's still family. Family? I couldn't hold back anymore. Where was this concern for family when she was systematically destroying my company? When she was lying to the board? When she was trying to sell patents she didn't own? My father slammed his hand on the table. Enough. Both of you succeeded in business. Why couldn't you just— Both of us, I interrupted. Dad, I built something real. Palmer built a house of cards by taking credit for other people's work. How are you still not seeing the difference? The doorbell rang again. This time it was Adrian, carrying a thick folder. Sorry to interrupt dinner, he said, though we hadn't even started. But Robin, you need to see this. We found something in Palmer's company email. He spread out documents on the dining room table, right over my mother's best tablecloth. Emails, spreadsheets, and bank statements created a paper trail that made my stomach turn. She was embezzling, Adrian explained, setting up fake vendor accounts, siphoning money into offshore accounts. She's been doing it for years, at every company she worked for. My mother sank into a chair. That's not possible. Palmer would never— It's all here, Mrs. Pierce, Adrian said gently. The evidence is irrefutable. My father picked up one of the bank statements, his hands shaking slightly. These transfers, they started right after she joined her first company, right after college. When you were telling everyone how proud you were that she'd landed such a prestigious position, I reminded him, while telling me I was wasting my time with my little startup. The silence that followed was deafening. I should have seen it, my father finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. All those jobs she suddenly left, the projects that never quite materialized, the explanations that never quite made sense. We all should have seen it, my mother added, tears in her eyes. Robin, I'm so— The doorbell rang a third time. Through the window, I could see police cars. That would be the fraud division, Adrian explained. They have some questions about those offshore accounts. My mother started to rise. I should call Palmer, Warner. Mom, I caught her arm. Stop protecting her. She needs to face the consequences of her actions. Finally. We watched through the window as police cars pulled away from our house, heading toward Palmer's apartment. My father stood beside me, looking lost. I always thought. He started, then stopped. I always believed. I know, Dad, I said softly. You believed what you wanted to believe. We all do sometimes. Vada started gathering the documents. The board meeting's at 9 tomorrow. We should get some rest. As we prepared to leave, my father caught my arm. Robin, wait. I was wrong. About everything. About you. I looked at him. Really looked at him. And saw something I'd never seen before. Respect. I know, I said simply. But it's not me you need to worry about now. Palmer's going to need help. Real help, not enablers. As I drove home that night, I thought about karma, about justice, about family. Palmer had wanted so desperately to be seen as successful that she'd forgotten the most important part. Earning it. Tomorrow, I'd take back my company. But tonight, I'd already reclaimed something more valuable, the truth. The boardroom felt different as I walked in the next morning. Gone was the tension from last week's hostile takeover. Instead, there was an air of embarrassed contrition as board members avoided meeting my eyes. Before we begin, Marcus, the board chairman, cleared his throat. I believe we owe you an apology, Robin. Save it, I said, setting down my coffee. We all got played by Palmer. The question is, what are we going to do about it? The door burst open, and Palmer strode in, still wearing yesterday's clothes, her usually perfect hair disheveled. 2 police officers followed close behind. She insisted on attending, one officer explained, given that she's still technically CEO until this meeting concludes. You think you've won, don't you? Palmer spat, glaring at me. You think exposing me makes you better? Ms. Pierce, Marcus intervened, given the circumstances. Oh, shut up, Marcus, Palmer snapped. You were happy enough to believe my lies last week. Called me visionary, remember? Adrian stepped forward, laptop in hand. Should I play the security footage from your office, the one showing you shredding documents at 3 a.m. this morning? Palmer's face went white. You were monitoring me? Standard corporate security, I explained. Something you'd know if you'd actually built a company instead of just stealing one. The board members shifted uncomfortably in their seats as Adrian connected his laptop to the projector. The footage showed Palmer frantically feeding papers into a shredder, occasionally glancing over her shoulder. Fortunately, Adrian continued, our IT team recovered the deleted files from your computer. Would you like to explain the shell companies, the fake invoices, the offshore accounts? I can explain everything. Palmer's voice took on the smooth, confident tone she'd perfected over years of deception. This is all a misunderstanding. Stop! I cut her off. Just stop! For once in your life, Palmer, tell the truth. She turned to me, and for a moment, I saw something crack in her carefully constructed facade. The truth? You want the truth? Fine. I was better at this than you. I played the game better. I knew how to make people see what I wanted them to see. That's not being better, I said quietly. That's just being a better liar. Same thing in business, she sneered. No, Marcus spoke up, surprising everyone. It's not. And that's what we failed to see. Robin built something real. You built an illusion. The police officer stepped forward. Ms. Pierce, we need to continue our discussion at the station. Wait. Palmer held up her hand, reaching into her bag. I have something you all need to see first. She pulled out a USB drive. Insurance, you might say. Every corrupt deal this board has ever made. Every corner cut. Every regulation ignored. If I'm going down, I'm not going alone. The room went silent. Then I started laughing. What's so funny? Palmer demanded. You really don't get it, do you? I shook my head. The first thing I did when I started this company was set up ethical business practices. triple-checked by external auditors, everything transparent, everything by the book. That's impossible, Palmer whispered. Nobody actually runs a clean business? I finished for her. That's what you told yourself to justify everything you did, isn't it? That everyone cheats, everyone lies, so it's okay if you do too? The police officers moved forward again, this time with handcuffs. This isn't fair, Palmer's voice cracked as they secured her wrists. I was just playing the game the way everyone else does. No, I corrected her. You were playing the game the way you convinced yourself everyone else does. There's a difference. As they led her out, she turned back one last time. They'll never trust you now, not after what I did with your company's name. I looked around the boardroom, at the people who'd believed her lies, who'd failed to see through her deception. But I also saw something else, an opportunity to rebuild, this time with everyone's eyes wide open. Actually, I said, they'll trust us more, because now they know exactly what real leadership looks like compared to fake success. The door closed behind Palmer for the last time. Marcus cleared his throat again. Well, he said, I believe we have a vote to take. One by one, the board members raised their hands. The vote was unanimous, just like it had been when they'd given the company to Palmer. But this time, they were voting for substance over style, truth over deception. As I reclaimed my seat at the head of the table, I thought about what Palmer had said about playing the game. She never understood that real success isn't a game at all. It's a responsibility. 6 weeks after Palmer's arrest, I stood on stage at the annual Tech Innovation Summit, preparing to announce our partnership with Vertex Industries. The audience was packed, not just with industry leaders, but with reporters still hungry for details about the scandal that had rocked the tech world. Ready for this? Edgar asked, adjusting his microphone. Born ready, I replied, scanning the crowd. My parents were in the front row, my father looking uncomfortable in his suit, my mother clutching her purse like a lifeline. They'd attended Palmer's bail hearing yesterday. She hadn't looked at them once. Ladies and gentlemen, the moderator began. Please welcome Robin, CEO of Pierce Technologies, and Edgar, CEO of Vertex Industries, to discuss their groundbreaking new partnership. The applause was polite but cautious. Everyone was waiting for the other shoe to drop. Thank you, I stepped up to the podium. Before we discuss the future, I want to address the past. The room went silent. 6 weeks ago, my company was nearly destroyed by fraud and deception. Many of you probably read about it, tweeted about it, maybe even celebrated watching a successful woman fall from grace. Cameras clicked rapidly. But that's not why I'm here today. I'm here because while one person tried to steal success, hundreds of brilliant engineers, developers, and innovators were actually building it, and they deserve to have their work recognized. I gestured to the screen behind me, where our latest project appeared, a revolutionary security system that would change how companies protected their data. This is what real innovation looks like, I continued. Not backdoor deals or stolen patents, but actual creation. And today, with Vertex Industries, we're taking it global. Edgar stepped forward, and together we outlined the partnership that would combine our technologies. The audience leaned forward, phones forgotten, as they realized this wasn't just damage control, this was something new. Then came the questions. How can investors trust Pierce Technologies after recent events? Because we're not hiding anything, I answered. Every patent, every line of code, every development stage is documented and verified. Transparency isn't just a buzzword for us anymore. It's our foundation. And Vertex isn't concerned about the association? Edgar took that one. We didn't partner with Pierce Technologies despite recent events. We partnered with them because of how they handled those events. Integrity under pressure reveals character. A hand rose from the middle row. Your sister's trial starts next month. How will that affect operations? I saw my mother flinch, but I kept my voice steady. Palmer's actions were her own. She'll face the consequences of those actions. Meanwhile, we'll keep building, creating, and proving that real success doesn't need deception to thrive. After the presentation, Vada found me backstage. "That was amazing!" She hugged me. "And guess what? 3 more companies have come forward about Palmer's previous scams. The prosecutor says it's looking at serious time." "Robin," my father's voice interrupted us. He stood awkwardly in the doorway, my mother beside him. "That was impressive." "Thanks, Dad." "I visited Palmer this morning," my mother said softly. "She wanted me to give you this." She handed me an envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper with 2 words. "I'm sorry." "Too little, too late?" Vada asked, reading over my shoulder. "Maybe," I said, folding the note. "But it's a start." Adrian burst in, waving his phone. "Stock's up 30% since the announcement. The partnership tweets are trending, and," he grinned, "Edgar just signed the final contracts." My father cleared his throat. "Robin, I know I never said this before, but I'm proud of you. Not just for handling this crisis, but for building something real in the first place." "We both are," my mother added, tears in her eyes. "Thanks," I said, surprised by how much their words still meant to me. "But I'm not done building yet." The door opened again. Edgar, followed by a stream of reporters. "Ready to show them the prototype?" he asked. I looked around at my support system. Vada's fierce loyalty, Adrian's steady guidance, my parents' belated but sincere pride, and Edgar's professional respect. Palmer had tried to take everything from me, but she'd inadvertently given me something instead. The chance to prove what real leadership looked like. "Let's do this," I said, heading back toward the stage. Behind me, I heard a reporter ask my father, "What's it like having one daughter in jail and another revolutionizing the industry?" "It's like watching 2 different paths," he replied. "One built on lies, the other built on work. I just wish I'd seen the difference sooner." I smiled to myself as I stepped into the spotlight. Palmer had always wanted to be seen as successful. I just wanted to build something that mattered. Turned out, that made all the difference. The courthouse steps were crowded with reporters as I made my way inside. Palmer's sentencing hearing had drawn media attention from across the country. Everyone wanted to see the final chapter of the tech world's biggest scandal. "Ready?" Vada squeezed my hand as we found seats in the courtroom. "As I'll ever be." Palmer sat at the defendant's table, wearing a plain navy suit instead of her usual designer clothes. She looked smaller somehow, diminished without her carefully constructed facade. The judge entered, and we all rose. As we sat back down, Palmer turned slightly, catching my eye for the first time since her arrest. There was something different in her expression, not the anger or defiance I'd expected, but something that looked almost like acceptance. "Before I deliver the sentence," the judge began, "would the defendant like to make a statement?" Palmer stood slowly. "Yes, Your Honor." She turned to face the courtroom, her hands trembling slightly as she held her prepared notes. "I've spent my whole life trying to prove I was special," she began. "Better. More successful. But everything I claimed to achieve was built on lies. The only person in my family who actually built something real was my sister. And I tried to steal that from her, too." My mother stifled a sob from the row behind me. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," Palmer continued. "I'm not even asking for leniency. I'm just finally telling the truth. I was wrong about everything, and I'm sorry." The judge nodded thoughtfully. "Ms. Pierce, your crimes show a pattern of deliberate fraud spanning multiple years and companies. The court sentences you to 7 years in federal prison, with the possibility of parole after 5 years. Additionally, you are ordered to pay restitution to all affected parties." As the gavel fell, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Not satisfaction or triumph, but something more complicated. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed us. "Robin, how do you feel about the sentence? Will Pierce Technologies pursue additional civil charges?" I raised my hand for quiet. "The only statement I'm making today is this. Success built on lies will always collapse. Real achievement takes work, integrity, and time. My sister chose shortcuts. I chose to build. That's all there is to say." My father approached as the reporters dispersed. Palmer asked to see you, before they take her to prison. I hesitated, then nodded. The guard led me to a small conference room where Palmer waited, handcuffed. I didn't think you'd come, she said. Neither did I. I watched your partnership announcement with Vertex, she said quietly. It was brilliant. Everything I pretended to be, you actually are. It's not about being brilliant, Palmer. It's about doing the work. I know, now. She looked down at her hands. I kept every article about you, every success, every innovation. I told myself I was studying the competition, but really, I was proud of you, even while I was trying to destroy you. That doesn't make it better. No, she agreed. Nothing makes it better. But maybe in 5 years, I can try to build something real too. The honest way. The guard stepped in. Time's up. I stood to leave, then paused. Palmer, that prototype you tried to steal? It wasn't even our best work. We've developed something 10 times better since then. She smiled sadly. Of course you have. That's what real innovators do. Outside, Vada, Adrian, and Edgar waited with my parents. The market's responding well to the sentencing, Adrian reported. Investors appreciate closure. And our new security system launches next week, Edgar added. Pre-orders are through the roof. My mother touched my arm. Are you okay? I looked at my unlikely support system, my best friend who never doubted me, my lawyer who fought for justice, my business partner who valued integrity, and my parents who finally saw the truth. You know what? I said. I really am. My phone buzzed with a message from Marcus. Board meeting in an hour. Big announcement. Back to work? Vada asked. Always. I smiled. Real success doesn't build itself. As we walked to our cars, I thought about Palmer's words about building something real. She'd chosen the illusion of success over the work of achievement, and that choice had cost her everything. But standing here, with my company thriving, my innovations changing the industry, and my integrity intact, I realized something important. Revenge hadn't driven Palmer's downfall. Truth had. And truth, unlike revenge, builds something lasting. Ready to change the world? Edgar asked as we headed toward the office. I thought about all the ideas still waiting to be developed, all the innovations yet to be created, all the real work ahead. Always ready, I replied. Let's build something that matters. Because that's what real leaders do.